Hello, dear friends and colleagues. Sometimes we, as interpreters, are faced with the dilemma of having to interpret for a speaker who either misspeaks or makes a big mistake. The decision is up to us to decide what to interpret. Well, yes and no. The answer is it depends on the type of interpreting that we are rendering. It is very clear that in a case of a conference, when the mistake is some not important, irrelevant error, we can just cover for the speaker. After all, it's not going to in any way impact the content of the rendition, and we can contribute to clarify or to stay away of any kind of confusion during the speech. For example, if today is Monday and the speaker says, "I am so glad to be here with all of you this Sunday," we can clearly interpret that as Monday instead of Sunday. It's not going to impact anything, it's not going to affect anything, it's just a greeting at the beginning or at the end of a speech. On the other hand, if we are interpreting in a court setting and the witness says that today is Sunday, or that the facts that he or she is testifying to happen on a Sunday, and in reality he or she meant Saturday and not Sunday, even though we might know because of the transcripts and the police reports that the facts happen on Saturday, we have to interpret Sunday. Why? Because in this case we are constrained by certain specific rules that make us interpret everything as said, because here is not a matter of protecting the speaker, here it is not a matter of making it more pleasurable or clearer to the listener. This is a matter of assessing credibility of somebody who is testifying to a set of facts that he or she saw, heard, or was told about. That's a big difference. And depending on the way that a person answers the question, then the triers of fact, whether it's a judge or a jury, will decide whether or not they will believe that witness. The problem is in situations where the speaker is somebody perhaps famous, perhaps a celebrity, a politician, an athlete, a movie star, and now we are faced with a situation when that speaker clearly makes a mistake. The kind of mistake that might be relevant or might not be so relevant, but because we are talking about a public figure, is the kind of mistake that many people already noticed, that many people already registered, especially those that will understand the source language that that speaker is using to communicate. Comes to mind the recent mishap in Mexico, where the president of Mexico, Peña Nieto, greeted the president of Uruguay, Mr. Tabaré, as the president of Paraguay. Of course, in this case there was no problem because there were no interpreters, since both presidents come from Spanish-speaking countries. But let's assume that that happened with some dignitaries that do not speak the same language and therefore were using the services of an interpreter. What happens then if the president says, "We welcome the president of one country," when in reality he or she is welcoming the president of a different country? Should we interpret the mistake? Should we protect the politician, in this case the president of a country, and just interpret the right country's name instead of the mistakenly pronounced? It's a big problem, because if we make the mistake, then we are probably making the problem or the embarrassment even bigger. On the other hand, if we protect that speaker, we're not doing a good job, because half of the audience already noticed the mistake, because half of the audience did not need of the interpreting services to understand the greeting. What to do in that situation? We interpret the mistake as is, we cover for the mistake. I could suggest to you that if faced with that situation, my solution would be neither one of those two. My solution would be, at that point, to ask the speaker to please repeat the statement. I would turn around and say, "Excuse me, Mr. President, could you repeat that last part?" That way you will give that person, the speaker, an opportunity to maybe fix the misspoken words. Maybe the second time will not make the same mistake about the president of the country that was visiting them, and in that situation you will save the day. At the same time, you are, as interpreter, saving face with the media and what half of the audience, because it will look to some that you really didn't hear what the president said, and therefore you're asking for clarification, an honest problem, an honest mistake. To others, it will probably look as if you really noticed the mistake and you tried in a very skillful way to protect the speaker by giving him a second chance to correct the mistake. At any rate, you will not be in trouble as the interpreter, because the speaker will feel safe with you, will understand even if the mistake is made the second time, that at least you gave him a shot, a fair opportunity to correct the mistake. And at the same time, even those savvy media members and audience people that know that you clearly heard the first statement will understand the skill that you are using here to try to give it a second opportunity. I think that in a situation like that, that should be the way to do it. And at the end of the day, everybody, or most everybody, will be happy. At least that is my opinion. Thank you.